Hello and welcome. You're watching Money, Money, Money. I'm Sumaira Abdi. If you have a child who's been diagnosed with a disability or has special needs, understandably, financial planning is going to be the last thing on your mind. But as people worry out loud about how they'll pay for their children's college education, the parents of children with special needs have worries that extend far beyond the few years that it takes to get a college degree. Do you need to alter or even tailor your financial plans in such cases? Joining in today to tell us exactly how should planning be done in case you have a child with special needs is Hemant Rustagi of Wiseinvest Advisors. Hi Hemant, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks especially for wanting to talk about a subject that is not very widely spoken about, and yet it's something that a lot of people deal with almost on a daily basis. But tell us, is financial planning for a family that has a child with special needs, is it really that different? I mean, how different are their goals? What are the things that they should be looking out for?
When it comes to financial planning for parents who have disabled children, it is slightly more challenging. The reason for that is, what do parents do when they plan for their children? They'll say, okay, one of my goals is to provide for education of my children and their marriage. And then the other goals could be their own retirement. So what they typically do is they have certain time horizon in mind that, okay, what is expected from the children? That they will study up to a certain level, then they will start working, they will get married, and they become financially independent. Then the parents have to worry about their own retirement. So basically what happens is, you're planning for one generation. Here, it's slightly different. Depending on how severe the disability is, or whether it's physical or mental, you may have to actually plan for two generations. Now, for example, after the parents are gone, they need to provide enough for this child to ensure that he or she does not have any problem at all. The second is obviously also you need to look at, whether it is a physical disability or whether it's mental disability. Depending on that, the requirement, even during the period, when they're a kid or when they're growing up, are very, very different from normal child. Now, for example, these children require constant care. There's ongoing medical expenses are there, right? All that has to be taken. The transportation can be a challenge. And another challenge for them is, like I mentioned earlier, because you are planning for two generations, how do you create enough corpus so that you don't have to worry about, the child's future? And also, the major worry is that once they are gone, what happens? I mean, if you're lucky enough that there are people in the family, there are siblings, there are relatives, there are family friends who can take care of him or her, but if they're not, I mean, that is the biggest challenge I think parents have. And in that sense, the financial planning process, broadly I would say, has to be same, but there are certain areas which definitely require focus from the parents.
So how should a financial plan then be tailored? I mean, is it the same that, you figure out whatever your broad goals are and you start saving towards them? Because also we mustn't forget that the parents' own retirement also has to be provided for.
When you talk about the needs of these children, okay, it has to be slightly different because the requirement for studies may be different, the money that you require may be different. So even while they're growing up, okay, it's not what happens in the normal circumstances that you say, okay, this is the kind of money. Sometimes actually to assess how much money you will need for their education also becomes very, very difficult. Even in the normal circumstances, the risk management is very, very important. That should be the first step for parents. That covers basically the life insurance, health insurance, and also creating an emergency reserve. But when the parents have a child who has special needs, it becomes even more important. It's very important for them not to look at traditional, insurance products. They have to look at the right product. Now, for example, we always advocate that investors should look at term plan. And thumb rule that we apply for term plan is saying that, okay, it should be the cover should be equivalent to your 10 annual incomes. But in this case, I think it has to be even more.
Higher.
Same thing with the health insurance. Very few health insurance companies will actually give you that cover. Even if they don't object to the child, with disability, becoming a part of it, it is all considered a pre-existing disease, so it's left out, is not covered. So I think it's very, very important to look at risk management. And when we talk about, let's say, creating an emergency reserve, it should not be typical 3 to 6 months. As we discussed earlier, on regular basis, the needs can be different.
And that's true, actually. You make a very valid point, Hemant, because in many such cases, one of the parent may have to give up their job to actually care for the child. There may also be a situation where, there could be some experimental treatments which are way more expensive, which you may want to take, and which is something that you cannot account for at the very start. So that is something that has to come out of the contingency fund, or perhaps prepone one of your goals. But like you said, that, a lot of the insurance is not really tailored to these people. And also, by the time this child becomes 18, legally, they will be responsible for their own financial and medical decisions. What does the parent do in that case? I mean, after the age of 18?
Private sector companies do not normally offer plans for disabled children, specific plans. But there are public sector plans. For example, LIC has offered a couple of plans. One is LIC Jeevan Vishwas, which is a pure endowment plan, and the other one is Jeevan Aadhar. Now, Jeevan Aadhar was the first one that was launched. Now, what happens in this plan is the person who has, disabled dependent, can buy this policy for the entire lifetime. After this person is not there, the money is paid to the nominee who is there, or the child, or it can be even a trust. Now, what happens here is that 20% of the money is paid as lump sum, and 80% is paid as annuity. Okay, and the similar thing happens in the other plan also. But my view is that these are again traditional plans. They will not provide enough cover or enough money for the child's future needs. So I think it still makes sense to separate these two needs, as we would do in normal circumstances, to go for a term plan aggressively, go for aggressive cover, and then create separate investment corpus. And as you rightly mentioned, this is what typically happens. In many cases, what we have seen is one of the parent has to give up job, because depending on how severe the disability is, the child may require special attention. We talked about what happens in case after the child is 18. As a natural guardian, you can manage finances of a child up to the age of 18.
Right.
Thereafter, the child becomes an adult and he himself takes care of his finances. But here, if it is a physical disability, it is possible for the child to take care of his own finances or her finances, so there is no problem in that. But in case of mental disability, depending again on how severe the disability is and how consistently it happens, that it may be difficult for them to handle their finances. So there is a provision, where the parents can apply for a legal guardianship even after the age of 18 under National Trust Act, which allows parent to become legal guardian. The parent themselves can become legal guardian, or somebody from the family, a sibling or some relatives can become. Even the family friends can become, provided the parents have and the family has given consent for them.
That's true, actually. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And, another handy tip for parents is to keep a letter of intent ready in case your child has requirements which are very specific in terms of their daily needs, or, the kind of schedule that they must follow. And this is something that the parents can do as early as possible, because in case, even if someone is incapacitated for, say, a short period of time, anyone who fills in would know exactly how things are done. We need to take a very quick break on that note. We'll come back in just a bit. On the other side, we'll tell you what all you can do to ensure the well-being of your child with special needs when the parents are no more. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a bit. Welcome back. You're watching Money, Money, Money. If you have a child with special needs or know someone who does, you'll know that there's a lot of anxiety regarding their future. Helping us today to chart out the financial future of such families is Hemant Rustagi of Wiseinvest Advisors. Hemant, you've given us a lot of handy tips already about, the asset allocation for families with special children and how they're different, how they need to be tailored. But what about when the parents are no more? Is there a requirement for something like a special needs trust for a child like this?
Well, I think what typically happens in a family is, the parents, if they believe that the siblings of this child or the relatives or the friends are good enough or will be good enough to take care of it, many a times I think the parents actually depend on that. We've also seen examples where, to make sure that, at least in their mind, parents think that that's the right way, is to they disinherit basically a child with a disability and, give that money to other sibling, thinking that this other brother and sister will take care of it. Now, the problem is that there is always a risk. Now, what happens that even if the brother or sister has the best of intent, and they get married, they get divorced, and then the assets are divided or everything else is divided, then the money will go to somebody else. The money will not be left there to take care of this child. So I think it makes a lot of sense to actually create a trust. Now the trust can be created obviously during the lifetime of the parents. It's a slightly lengthy process, but it's not very complicated process, not very expensive process also. Maybe creating a trust will cost around 30,000-40,000 rupees for the parents. Now what you do is, when you create a trust, is obviously there has to be a trust deed. You can take a help of a legal person or a financial planner who can help you out with this. Now this trust deed obviously will have all the objective with which the trust is being set up. What is the objective? It could be that you can actually even mention in the trust that, okay, during the lifetime of this child, regular income will be provided, but once the child is no more, that lump sum can be handled by somebody else. Depending on how you want it to be drafted, that can be drafted. Obviously then there are certain formalities that you need to create a PAN card, you need to then appoint somebody as a trustee. Now this is the very crucial part. Who is the trustee? First thing, the parent themselves should not be the trustee. Right. Because the whole objective is that when parents are no more, somebody is there to take care of it. Second, anyone who is appointed as a trustee should be younger than the parent, because the whole idea is that once parents are gone, somebody should be able to take care of them. Now the trustee can be within the family, can be a sibling or family friend, or even anybody from outside. A legal representative. Whom the family can trust, whom family can trust to be a trustee. Now in some cases it is quite possible that the families may not have anybody. It's a small family, for example. Just imagine parents and only this child, and the parents may or may not trust the relatives or family friends to do it. So what do you do in that case? Now in that case they can either approach NGOs, or they can approach National Trust. Now National Trust is an autonomous body which has been established by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Now this has been set up specifically to take care of people who have some disability.
That's true actually, but in this case, Hemant, if you have a trust going, do you still need to draft a will, whatever favor you want to give this child? Is that still required? And the other part to this is, how does this child with special needs figure in the will of their grandparents or other relatives who may be, wanting to make a financial contribution? Should they name this child, or should they then will it to the trust?
See, there are two aspects here. One is, once you create a trust, and the trust practically takes care of everything. Many cases what happens is the trust is not created, then the parents have to write a will, and the will then very specifically, very clearly mention what is that they want to keep aside for this child and how this has to be taken care of. Like I said, these children can also file their own returns. They can, there are certain tax benefits available there. So if the parents and all want to contribute, actually, they can contribute directly in the name of that child.
And Hemant, just to wrap things up, what kind of tax benefits do these families actually have? Is there any sort of advantage that they enjoy?
Well, yes, I mean there are certain tax benefits which are available to the person who have dependent and also the disabled person. But unfortunately, maybe not many people are aware, not many people take advantage of it. To begin with, there is an exemption under Section 80U. This is basically, it allows a deduction of 50,000 for person with disability. When we talk about person with disability, it has been defined as someone who has a minimum disability of 40%. Right. There, the deduction is 50,000. But if it's a severe disability, which is 80% or more, then there is a deduction of 1 lakh rupees. Okay. Then there is another section called Section 80DD. Now this is basically provides a tax exemption to someone who has disabled children as dependents. Now this will basically cover their maintenance, their medical expenses, or if that person has contributed. We talked about certain LIC schemes. Right. Those schemes, again, depending on how severe the disability, whether it is 40% or 80%, here again, 50,000 for person with disability, and in case of severe disability, it is 100,000. Another important thing, very, very important, is under Section 64. This is very important. Generally what happens is, the income of minor gets clubbed with the income of parent. Right. In this case, in case of disability, a disabled child, the income of child is not clubbed with the parents. That's what exactly I said earlier, that the gift can be given directly to the child, so that there are no tax implications.
Well, that's a fair point, Hemant. And, at some point, at least, we hope that we've been able to address some of your worries. We do understand that the worries of parents who have children with special needs, not all their worries are financial in nature. I mean, these are children for whom it's imperative to have a network of trustworthy and reliable support systems. But you can see on your screen some of the NGOs who are doing exceptional work in this field. Feel free to reach out to them. And I really hope that this episode helps at least in easing some of your anxiety related to the financial matters. Feel free to write to us also in case you have questions which you think haven't been answered on the episode, and we'll try our best to answer all of them for you. Hemant, we'll take a quick break on that note, but there's more left on the show. But before we take that break, here's our weekly question. Do you have a will in place, and what prompted you to actually make your will? Write to us at moneymoneymoney@network18online.com. Tell us why you did that, and you stand a chance to actually be a part of one of our future episodes. Do stay tuned. Up next is our viewer call-in segment, Can I Afford It? Welcome back. You're watching Money, Money, Money. Now on to Can I Afford It? If you're looking for a bit of extravagance in your life, well, we're the people to call, and our expert will tell you if you can afford it or not. First up, we have a caller already. Shraddha Kampurkar calls in from Navi Mumbai. Hi, Shraddha. What's your question?
Hi, my name is Shraddha Kampurkar, and my income is 38,000 rupees. My expenses are 15,000, and my savings are 1 lakh. I wanted to know whether I can afford to buy a Samsung Galaxy Note 4.
All right, Shraddha, so how much is this upgrade of your phone going to cost you, and how are you going to pay for it?
I think it's about 35,000 rupees, and I think I'll use the EMI option on my credit card.
All right, Hemant. Well, I'm not a big fan of these easy loan EMI schemes. Are you?
No, not really. Not really. I think it doesn't really make sense. I think it always makes sense to look at your own finances. And yes, all of us love to have certain things, but I think we need to buy them at the right time, at a time when we have taken care of other needs. This is something, to me, it looks like a luxury at this stage. So my recommendation is no.
All right, Shraddha, like my grandmom used to say, if it isn't broken, it doesn't need replacement. Sorry, for now, your request has been denied. Up next, we have Sushant Pandey, who calls in from Bangalore. Hi, Sushant.
My name is Sushant Pandey, and I am 29 years old. My income is 85,000 per month, and I spend about 40,000 rupees a month. And I have savings of 4 lakh. So I wanted to ask you that, can I afford to buy Google glasses?
Okay, so this is going to cost you, what, close to 1 lakh? How are you going to pay for it?
It should cost me about 95,000 rupees, and I plan pay from my savings.
Well, Hemant, he sounds like one of those gadget geeks. What do you think? We can give him the go-ahead?
No, I think if you really look at what he has accumulated, he has not mentioned about whether he started investing for some of his goals or not. Looking at the kind of money that he'll be spending and looking at how much he has accumulated so far, I think it's a luxury for him right now. I don't think it really makes sense for him to spend this kind of money unless he has initiated the process for something that he may require tomorrow. So I would say no.
All right, Sushant, your request is denied as well. And if you look at what we say at the beginning, it says a bit of extravagance, not really a quarter of your savings. So for now, your request is denied. I'm sorry. Finally, an email query has been sent to us by Shan Singhal, who writes to us from New Delhi. He says he's 34 years old. He's a professional and earns about 1.2 lakhs a month. Out of this, his expenses account for about 40,000. He lives in his own home, and he has total savings of about 8.5 lakhs. So he says he has adequate insurance, which has been provided by his employer, and now wants to know if he can use about 4 lakhs of his savings to buy his wife a solitaire.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, insurance is not an answer for everything. Yes, he does have insurance. That comes into play if unfortunately something were to happen to him.
Yeah.
But in this case, he's planning to spend almost 50% of what he has accumulated so far. Yes, I'm sure he wants to give this gift to his wife, but I think the kind of money that he's spending at this stage, I think he needs to maybe reduce his budget a bit. I'm sure he can plan something else, but I would definitely not recommend spending 50% at this stage.
Oh, so you've put Shan in a dilemma, actually, whether to listen to you, the financial expert, or to listen to his wife. But Shan, from Hemant, the answer is that you can't afford it at the moment. Hemant, thank you so much for joining in and answering all our viewers' queries. Viewers, we need to wrap up, but do remember to keep writing to us at money@network18online.com. You can also find us on Twitter. Write to CNBC TV 18 News. Use the hashtag money. And remember that you can also log on to YouTube to catch all our previous episodes. Thank you so much for watching. As always, we'll see you again next week.